So I'm going to show you the time and the date. You can see there. The date is the 2nd of November. The time is 10:14. Now, there's a reason why I showed you the date and the time, and it is because it is soon time for the election date in America, and I wanted to film this, record this before the date, so that when I post it, people know that I recorded this before the election date. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the election in America, and I want to do this before the election. But I do want to say from the get-go that I don't feel like I am the voice for America. I don't feel like I get all of the knowledge, the revelation, the understanding about what's going on in America and or what's going to happen. You know, go back 4 years ago, this time with the election, there was a lot of voices, a lot of prophetic voices, basically a lot of people saying this is what's going to happen, this is going to be the next president, and a lot of talk was around Trump, that he was going to be re-elected. Now, you know, in that time, going back, you know, I was seeking God, and I'm like, God, what's going on, you know? And I felt like that there wasn't much knowledge given to me. You know, God doesn't always have to speak directly to me. I understand that sometimes God speaks through other people. Many times he does. And so many times I just need to listen. And so, you know, going back 4 years, I was listening a lot. And that's also what I'm doing now. I don't feel like this is my first calling, you know, America, but I believe I have some knowledge to give based upon the prophecies that are given by a lot of people. Now, there's something huge that I want to really, you know, talk about this time, and it is about time. It's about timing, right? Because I want to give understanding when it comes to prophecies. One thing that man has a real problem with when it comes to prophecies, a big problem and a big weakness also man has, it is timing. It's timing. We have a problem with timing, lining up our timing with God's timing. It's a big problem that we have, and this is a lesson that God taught me. You know, when I was looking back at the election 4 years ago, I was looking a lot about the timing. I want to share a personal story from me. It is a big story. It has a story of its own. It has a testimony of its own. I'm going to cut it down because I want to talk about timing and how we can apply it to every prophecy we hear so that we can test things in the right way. So we go back quite some years. You can see my house in the background where I live. This is where I live. Go back quite a few years. I've been living here for like 11 years now, almost. But around about in the second year of living here, I was frustrated. You know, I'm very grateful to live here. You know, the house belongs to the family. To live here, to live in this area is fantastic. But one thing that I really struggled with was the fact that this house was just so old and worn out. When I moved in, it was leaking in the roof. It was nasty in the roof. It was leaking in the basement. There was water in the basement. When you went down there, it was nasty. It was damp. It was just badly built. The roof was low. I had to duck my head. There was stuff everywhere. Things weren't working. It was just, I just don't want to live here. I'm grateful, but at the same time, it's just not my dream home. And it came to the point where I managed to save up just under 10 grand, 10,000 English pounds. And that's enough to put down a deposit on a new house. And so I'm like, you know what? I have the money now. It's time for me to, you know, to pack my bags and move somewhere else with my wife, because this place is just not working. And so, long story short, in that time of looking for houses and thinking about the future, I really felt like God say, stay where you are. Do not move anywhere else, but invest in the house. Invest where you are. Put that money that you have into the house and the barn and renovate. And at the start, I did not want to do it, but in the end, I gave in and we stayed, and all of the money went into renovating. And so that's what I've been doing. And so it came to the point now where I was just all in. I was renovating, I was investing, and I was working so hard because I felt like God wanted me to do that. I felt like God told me invest. And so I'm going all in now. I'm investing and I'm working. And so I'll work my day job and I'll come home, put on my work clothes, and I'm renovating, and I'm working so hard, and I'm working until it's late in the evening. I come in, I'm tired and I'm worn out, and I do it day in, day out, day in, day out, and I'm getting more and more tired. Not only that, I'm getting frustrated because I set goals and I set deadlines, like by the end of the week I want this done, next month I want this done, and I'm setting goals that I could not reach, and I'm getting frustrated with myself because things are taking longer than what I had expected. I'm getting frustrated, and so I'm getting more stressed, and I'm getting anxious because it's like it's taking too long. And so, a long story short, I'm tired now, I'm worn out, and I'm on top of the roof. We've changed the roof, I'm just doing the last little bits, the roof panels, and I'm taking off the old ones. I have a crowbar in my hand, long crowbar, metal, heavy, and I'm pulling off the old piece of wood. And it's a stubborn piece of wood, it's not coming off. And I'm pulling, and in the end I put all my weight onto the crowbar and I'm pulling, and then all of a sudden the wood snaps, and the crowbar goes into my head, and I knew straight away this is not good. And I slowly made my way down into the house, and I fell fast asleep. Boom. And long story short, shortly after that I became very, very, very ill. And it just came, boom, like that one night. And the pain I cannot describe. The only thing I can say that it was torture. It was torture to me, and I felt this close to death over a period of time. And it came to the point where I love my family, I love my wife, I don't want to leave my family, I don't want to leave my wife. But at the same time, it was like, if I'm gonna live another day like this, I don't want to live. I can't handle this. And I longed for death because I longed to be free from the sickness. And so in that time now where I'm so sick, I'm so unwell, I can't function, I cry out to God, God, why am I going through this? Why is it that I'm experiencing this intense torture, pain? Because you told me to do this. I'm like, God, you told me, I was just doing what you told me to do. So why have you let me get sick? And in that, I just heard so clearly, the reason why you got sick was because you added to what I said. You added deadlines. You put time onto what I said. That's why you're sick. I never gave you a time scale. I just told you to invest. I told you to build. I didn't tell you to get stressed. I didn't tell you to work yourself into the ground. I didn't tell you to get things done at a certain time. I didn't give you any time. I just said invest. I just said build, rebuild. You put the deadlines on yourself. You put the stress on yourself. You put the anxiety on yourself. You added to what I said. You wanted to put things into a time, but I didn't want to give you time because I just wanted you just to live every day as it comes. And I've learned that the hard way, that many times we can hear a word from God, but because we have a longing to see it happen, we add time. Or because time's going and we're getting older and we're getting frustrated, we add time, we add a deadline. We do this so many times in the church context. We hear something and then we're like, okay, by the end of the year, this is what we want. This is what we're longing for. And it's not always bad, but many times we add to what God says, and in doing so, we add stress, we add anxiety, and it can come to the point where the thing that we said would happen within the year doesn't happen because we've added time into it. Many times God doesn't give you a time. He just tells you what is going to happen at some time. He done the same thing with Abraham and Sarah. You're gonna have a child, right? You're gonna have children, but I'm not giving you a time. I'm not saying when. And so like 20 years pass and they're like, it's too late now. We're too old to have a child. And so they add time. They're like, we got to fix this ourselves because we're running out of time. And so, Abraham, you're going to have to marry my slave and have a child that way. And so in doing so, they added time. They tried to speed up the process of God. And in doing so, it reaped consequences, not just there in the family, in the home, but also afterwards and even now. The reason why we have so much conflict in the Middle East is because of time being added to what God said. It reaps consequences. And I learned that the hard way. Do not add time to what I've said. There will come a time maybe where God adds time. Yeah, God done that later with Abraham. Next year, you'll have a child. Now he gives a time. Then you can work in the time. Otherwise, you take one day at a time. And so I say all that because when I was listening to the prophecies now, I'm like, you know what? It sounds good. It sounds right. I feel like I believe it. I feel like it lines up with what God is saying, but I'm not sure about the timing. The timing. I've learned about the timing because everyone's saying he's going to be president now, like in the next few weeks or the next few days or next few months, like he's going to continue to be president. And I'm like, I hope so, but I'm not sure about the timing. Is it now? Because many times we hear something, and because we have a longing, we want it to happen, we want it to be true, we say it's going to happen now. Many times God doesn't say it's now. It might be in the future. And so we have now Trump running for president again. And so my thoughts have been, I'm saying this before the election, my thoughts have been, maybe it wasn't now. Maybe it's in the future. Maybe God wants to take us through a process first. Maybe we've got the timing wrong. And that's what I've been thinking the whole time. And that's what I'm saying now. Maybe it's time now. You go back 4 years when all of these prophecies were given, and the day after the election or the day of the election, we find out it wasn't Trump. All of the other Christians, I would say, straight away were on it, calling people false prophets and false teachers and false. I'm not going to go into judging people. I'm going to say what I believe. I believe it's important to be slow to judge, because I understand from myself it is easy to hear something and then because you have a longing to add something, not because you want to change up the word of God, but because you have a longing. I've seen this not just in my own life, in other people's lives. Many times because we want things to happen and we see something, we experience something, we feel like God is saying now. And sometimes we get the timing wrong. This is why we are told to test prophecies. Why are we told to test? It's quite simple, really, because we can get things wrong. Prophecies may not actually be correct. And so we're told to test. But testing, many times, when it comes to prophecies, needs to be tested over time. And sometimes many years. And so for me, with this, let me give this time. Let me test things over time. In the last days, Jesus says, many false prophets will arise, and they will deceive many. And the good question is, well, how? How will they deceive so many? And one simple answer is, well, because people are not testing. People are not testing prophecies. And I've seen this many times. People struggle to test prophecies, especially when they're good, and especially when they line up with what they want and what they desire and what they also think. If someone speaks something over your life, God's going to bless you, God's going to do something great in your life, God's going to give you wealth, God's going to give you health. These are things that we desire. And so if someone says those things, we want it to happen. And so we say yes and amen. Yes, let it be. But we rarely test it. We rarely test the good prophecies. We rarely test the prophecies that line up with what we think. I see this all the time, as individuals in the churches. We rarely test the good prophecies. But it's important to understand, yes, God can say those things. But to understand that biblically, this is how false prophecy works. You pull on the good things, the things people want to hear, the things people are desiring. These are the things that the false prophets prophesy about. God's going to do great things. God's going to do this in your life and that in your life, and it's going to be great. And yes, God can do those things, and I hope God does do those things for you. But in the Bible, when you look at it, that's how the false prophets work. They pull on the desires of the hearts of men. And so in the Bible, but also in here and now, because they line up with what our heart desires, we don't test them. We don't test them. We have a problem with testing prophecies, and with this video I want people to understand that it's important to test, and also how to test prophecies. I believe also that within this season of testing, I think it's important to also speak to those that are speakers. I don't know how many people will see this, I don't have hundreds of subscribers, but I'll speak to the few that I know. That we who speak things out also need to test things. And I believe many times we don't spend enough time in testing what has come to us and what we're going to say. And the reason why I can say that is because I am someone that observes other people and, and watches other people and listens to other people. This is what I see. And I want to say this with respect, There's many people that labor in work for God, but we all do fall short sometimes, even myself. This is something that I see, is that when something happens, when an event happens, or when someone does something or says something, within hours, you have so many people, so many leaders posting and reacting and responding to what has happened. And they give their thoughts and they give some Bible scriptures based on what has happened. Now, the reason why I believe a lot of us that are leaders, that are speaking, don't take enough time to discern and to test is because by reposting something, by posting your thoughts hours after something has happened, shows me that the person has not put in days before God. The person has not put in days of prayer and days of reading and days of seeking. God, should I say this? God, how do I say this? God, do I go to the person themselves first? Like, how do I do this? Those Like, that process is not there. It's just something that's come to me and I deliver it straight away. And in doing so, many times we don't have the full understanding of the picture. We don't have the full revelation. We have just a bit. This is why many YouTubers and people that post things have to then take down their videos later on and say, you know what, I got my information, incorrect. Or they have to now defend what they have said because they haven't taken the time to really seek and get the full understanding of what has come to them. And the truth is that, a person can have a gifting, they can have a calling from God, but they also need to have discernment. They also need wisdom. When do I speak this out? How do I speak this out? Is this just for me? This is why for me, so many times it's like I'm battling because something comes to me and I want to share things out. I could have hundreds of videos by now, but the reason why I don't, one main reason, is because I have to take time to test things. I have to take time to really let things land in my heart. How do I say things? This right now, this hasn't come to me today. It's been building up on me over some days. And so it's important to understand that people can deliver messages that are unprepared. They don't have the full understanding. People have not put in the days or the months or the weeks or the years into what they're saying. And this is why, for example, with the Trump prophecy, many people got it very wrong because people are reacting in the time, in the season, and they're going by what they're feeling and also what their desires want. We as listeners need to understand that when people, add time to things, we need to be careful. And we also need to understand that people can add their desires to a prophecy. And so that's why we need to test things. We need to test prophecies because we are people and we can very easily add on to what God is saying. I believe one thing we really need to be careful about is a word that I would call busybodying. We need to be careful about being busybodies. The Bible talks about busybodies. And I believe a lot of what we see today is busybodying. And I'll say that with humbleness because I don't know if everyone does it on purpose. But I believe a lot of what we see on social media and YouTube and even in messages is busybodying. And basically that means that we are more interested in people and reacting to what people have done or said. Like, I'm more interested in gossip, like what that pastor done or what that person done or what that celebrity done or what I saw on TV. This is basically Christian gossip. But it's just wrapped in this kind of nice packet where we don't really see it as Christian gossip. If you go onto people's YouTube channels, for example, like I do sometimes, and you look at Christian YouTubers that have hundreds of thousands of followers, you go down the hundreds of videos and you go down to the beginning, many times what you see is something different to what you see now. Because what you see in the beginning many times is you see Bible studies, or you see, them sharing a message that has been given to them, and they have a Bible in front of them and they're sharing their heart. And like, you see that kind of that humble beginning, and then after some time they do a reaction video. Some pastor has sinned, and then the views go up. And then they do some other reaction video, and then they start talking about celebrities and TV and famous people, and then the views go up. And then what you see is over time the Bible studies become less and the reaction videos become more. This is busybodying. We're more interested in people's, information behind closed doors. That's what we want to hear. We have itching ears. We don't really want to hear, Bible studies. We want gossip. This is Christian gossip. This is the latest news, and this is exciting things, and in some way it makes us feel better. And I think we need to be careful with that, because I think a lot of what we're seeing is actually busybodying. Because if you build up your ministry on people's downfalls, it's a very unstable ground. Like, my videos should not be built upon another man's downfall. If that's where I get my messages from, it's a red flag. If someone is always starting their messages on someone else's downfall, it's a red flag. Because a message should come from the heart of God. I'm with God, I'm seeking God, and this has come to me. That should be the foundation. The foundation should never be, let me take in a celebrity, talk about that, and then I'll talk about God. But the heart of the prophet is to talk about God. And yes, they take up subjects here and there, but I think we need to be very careful about busybodying, because the Bible talks about having itching ears, where we no longer are capable of listening to sound doctrine. Like, this video now is quite long. Like, how many are gonna listen to this video until the end? We have itching ears. We don't have the capacity to listen to things for long enough. We want quick information. We want gossip. We want the latest news. This is called itching ears. The Bible says there's gonna come a time. This is prophecy. This is basically prophesying our time. We don't have the capacity to listen to long messages these days because we have itching ears. We're busybodies. We're going back and forth. And I think we need to be very careful with that. And especially when it comes to many voices about leaders, elections, and things to come, a lot of what we're seeing is busybodying. We are reacting to people rather than talking about God, rather than good Bible studies, sound doctrine. My ears have been itching, like literally, like they've been itching, like irritating me. Both of them, past few days, they've been just irritating me, but itching here and there, itching there, literally. And some time ago I bought some eardrops, and I'm like, let me just put some eardrops in. So I get my wife, I said, can you put some eardrops in my ear? She puts them in my ear, and within like 20 minutes or so, I'm like, the difference in my ear. Eardrops, what is inside of eardrops is oil. When I got oil in my ear, it made a vast difference. It was very different. It was so much better. To have oil in your ear improves the itching. And I want to give some advice and a word to those that listen to the end. If you have itching ears, if you're always looking at what people are saying, if you have problems with, busybodying, you want the latest news, you need some oil for your ears to stop the itching. Basically, oil in the Bible is a picture of God's anointing. God can put his oil on a person. He can put his oil in your ear and stop your ears from itching, so that you can listen to good, sound doctrine rather than going to and fro. You need to listen to good, sound doctrine so that you can test what is being said, so that you are equipped for when people say many things about events that are happening. I will give you the advice: God, anoint my ears with oil so that my ears will no longer itch, so that I'm no longer drawn to listen to so many different voices, so that I can sit and actually listen. Anoint my ears so that I can listen to good, sound doctrine. Soon it is the election date, and this is my feeling. We have got the time wrong, but it's quite possible that the time is quite soon, and that Trump will be president in America again. That's what I've been feeling all of this time. And with that, I want to say, anoint your ears so that you're able to listen to good, sound doctrine, because there's gonna come, quite possibly, many different voices and many more prophecies and many more words of knowledge, and we need to be able to test things, and we also need to be able to not have that desire to listen to every single voice, because there are so many different voices saying so many different things, to be able to just stop and listen to good sound doctrine.